Okay guys, today I'm going to go over a Bachmann 260 steamer that comes with the Soundtraxx sound on board. This is my stepfather's and he asked me to take a look at it, see if I could turn the sound down for him. Comes in a box like this. See, sound value on board. It's basically a Tsunami sound decoder that Bachmann's installing. I think they're detuned a little bit, but we're going to take a look at it, see what we can do for turning down the volume, check the speed, things like that. He runs DC, not on DCC, so we have to do the programming for him. So we'll take a look at it and give it a little review and see how it goes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is test it on DC. I switched my tracks over to DC power. I'm using a MRC Tech 2 Locomotion 2500. It's an old DC power pack I've had around here for a while. So when first thing I noticed when I try and start this is if I slowly turn the dial up, of course on DC it takes a while for a decoder to get going, especially a sound decoder, but see what it's doing right now? It's making a clicking noise and the light is flashing. Okay, I only turned it up to the point where it started doing that, and the reason it's doing that, if you read in the instructions, it does clearly state that it doesn't work good on a power pack that has pulse power. Now I know this Locomotion 2500 that I'm using does incorporate pulse power to give you better starts on DC. It just kind of pulses at the low speeds. So that's what you're actually seeing here. I'll show you again. As you turn it up, see how it's just kind of pulsing. If I turn it up a little more, eventually the locomotive does start, but when it does, it takes off like a jackrabbit. Back it up now. Just the reverse switch and back it up. It'll do the same thing. It just kind of pulses at first and then all of a sudden takes off. And if I slowly bring the dial down, I can get it to go about that fast before it stops. So when we get it on DC and the programming of JMRI, I'm going to try and turn down the CVs and the power and see if that has any effect when we come back to DC, so that I can get it running good for him on his DC layout. So one more time, here it's pulsing and it takes off like a jackrabbit, then I can slow it down a little and then it runs pretty good. But I know there's room for improvement, so let's get it on DC and see what the difference is. Or on DCC, I'm sorry. Okay, so here we are. I switched the layout back to DCC. I'm just using my little power cab here for now. And I've got it set to 28 speed steps, so here's speed step 1 out of the 28 speed steps. That's not too bad for out of the box. You can live with that, but as you pick it up, that's speed step 2 already. It's moving out pretty good. So that's 3. Stop. I'm going to come back. That's 4. That's 8 out of 28, which seems to be plenty fast already. So let's do a full speed run by and see what happens. I don't know, I'm not a big steam guy, but to me that seems to be awful fast. So next thing we're going to do is get out the JMRI and do a little programming on it, see what we can do about the speeds. Matter of fact, before we do that, I'm going to pull out the tunnel speedometer and let's just take a look at what kind of speeds we have here. So I'll be right back. Okay guys, so now I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorite model railroad tools. That's called the Accutrack tunnel speedometer. I call it a tunnel speedometer. It's Accutrack MRT speedometer. It gives you the reading and scale miles per hour. Works for either HO or N scale. Just have to change the setting. All I gotta do is turn it on. As you can see, it says HO, ready to go. And now a little light's flashing, so what we're going to do is run this through at speed step 1 and let's see what it comes out at. Remember now, we haven't changed any of the factory settings yet. So there we go, 4.8 miles per hour. backwards and see if it turns out to be the same. Oftentimes it won't. Okay, 4.7, that's not bad. Now we're going to give it a high speed run through it, full speed, being speed step 28. So here we go. 71 miles per hour. I think that's a little fast. So, alright, now I'm going to go do some programming and I'll get right back to you. I'm not going to go through the details of how I program it yet, but let me just make some adjustments with JMRI and then we'll come right back. Okay, so what I did was I took the time to open up JMRI and I put the locomotive on the programming track and I read all the values from the decoder into JMRI, created the file for it. So here's the settings. This is the master control volume and it's factory set at 225 out of 255, so it's not quite full volume, but what I'm going to do is just grab a slider here, turn that down to, well, let's go all the way down to 100 just to see what it's like. There's 101, that's close enough. And then I just click write changes on this sheet. And there we go, it's programmed. So that sounds a little better. Try the horn, or the whistle. Still loud enough. There's the bell. That might be just a little too loud for my liking. So I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. This is bell volume, so I'll drop that down from 40 to 32. We'll try that. Write the changes. There we go. That's just a quick example of how to do the settings. I'm going to turn the camera off and tweak it a little bit more, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I got done adjusting the volume where I wanted. Now here's a quick example of how to use the speed tables in JMRI. It's not really going to be a tutorial. I just want to show you real quick in case you haven't seen it before. But if these are the 28 speed steps. Right now the factory programming has it set at 255, which is the maximum for speed step 28, and it starts at 9 for speed step 1. We know it started a little fast, so I'm just going to put a little checkbox on this end and on this end. Go up here and say use speed table, and I'm going to just drop this down to 1 or 2. I'll make it 3 for now, and that keeps a nice linear line, straight line from speed step 1 to 28. Then I'm going to write the changes on the sheet, and it's going to go through the motions of programming each of those values real quickly into the decoder. As soon as that's done, I'm going to set up the tunnel speedometer and we'll take a run through. Actually, I'm going to bring that top end down a little. That was way too fast. So by putting this checkbox at this end and this end, when I move one of these sliders on the end, it brings everything with it in proportion. So I'm going to drop this way down to about 163 it's at right now. We'll give that a shot. Write the changes real quick. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to shut off the camera again and I'm going to grab the tunnel speedometer and we'll send it for a ride. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back at the speedometer. Now let's see what difference the changes to the speed table made. Here's speed step 1. That's creeping along real nice and slow. And I just so you know, I turned off the momentum in both acceleration and deceleration. I always do that when I'm setting up my speeds. So there we go, 1.6 miles an hour. That would be scale miles an hour, as if in real life this thing would be going 1.6 if it was full scale. So let's take a run through at full speed and see what the top end is like. There we go. Speed step 28. 63 miles an hour. That's a little better improvement from the 71, but I think we need to bring that down a little bit yet. So I'll go make some changes, and when I get it where I like it, I'll come back and we'll finish this up. Till then, I like using this tunnel speedometer. Look at that. Okay, so I'm back. I just made an adjustment one more time, and turns out that this thing really gets to top speed in a hurry. For those of you familiar with speed tables, I had to set speed step 28 to 110 out of 255, so that's less than half the available voltage, and this thing is already running full speed. So interesting to see what this will do on DC. As you can see, I've got it going through at about 54 miles an hour. I don't know what the top end on something like this should be in real life on a little steamer like this, but I'm going to leave it at 54, and if my stepfather doesn't like that, we can turn it down again. So I'm going to just get set up back on DC, and let's see how this thing works. Okay, I've got it set back to DC. Now this will be an interesting experiment because I've never done this before, but let's run it through on full speed on DC and see if it turns out anywhere near the same top speed as it did on DCC. So here we go. Full speed. Alright, 55 miles an hour. That's almost exactly the same. So obviously the speed tables that we set up for DCC also affect the way it runs on DC. So I'm going to bring it back into the picture here. Now remember, I have that pulse power on this pack, so it's really, well, that's still moving out nice and slow without that pulsing that we had before. That's interesting. That nice little creep speed. Can't tell you what step it's on or anything. That's on about 22 out of 100 on the dial for this power pack. So look at that. Just about the same slow speed we had at speed step 1. The only difference is on DC, when you stop, the sound goes off. What you have to do is advance the throttle a little bit until the sound comes on, which I'm doing right now. I'm slowly dialing it up, hitting about 20 right now. There, the light came on. There's that pulsing. And as soon as it's done, as soon as I get past that, a little more, a little more. Whoop, there's that jackrabbit start again. But once I dial it back down slowly, I can get to a nice slow speed. So I'm assuming if you had a nice filtered DC power pack, you should be able to get this thing to run really nice with a nice slow speed. Well, that's it for this video. It's just a little quick review and playing around with these new Bachmanns with the Tsunami decoder in them. So, until next time.